This is the second day of this February 2026 two-day sesshin. And we'll resume our text, Silent Illumination, a Chan Buddhist Path to Natural Awakening by Guo Gu. And the chapter this is under is the underlying feeling tones. And he begins, in the platform scripture, Master Wei Nong, so this is a Chan master from the 7th century. He's actually the 6th ancestor of our lineage. Of course, Bodhidharma being the first, and then Master Wei Nong is the 6th. Okay, so in the platform scripture, Master Wei Nong provides 3 principles to deal with non-grasping. So I already know this is what this talk is going to be about today, non-grasping. So here are the 3 principles: no thought, no form, and not abiding. And Guo Gu will be exploring these 3 principles. Again, I'll just repeat it. No thought, no form, and non-abiding. And he goes on. These 3 principles are antidotes to our grasping of our inner world, outer relations, and identity. In order to appreciate these 3 principles, we need to recognize grasping as a deep-seated feeling tone. It's a sense of lack, a thirst for something. Of course, being discontented can bring about change for the better in our lives, but here I'm referring to a habit of possessiveness, which arises from self-grasping. Thoughts, feelings, and narratives are what we grasp internally. Say that again. Thoughts, feelings, and narratives are what we grasp internally. Narratives. It reminds me of seeing the mind as kind of, in some way, seeing our mind, this is small m, seeing our mind as kind of like we have these, as Guo Gu talked about yesterday, these deep-seated habitual patterns. And we certainly have those in our mind, don't we? And a good analogy, not for the entire mind, but for some of it, is it's kind of like a tape recorder, And just, you're playing this tape recorder, and then it's rewind and playing again. It's just this loop of not continuous loop, but we have these certain habitual patterns in the mind that recur over and over again. It could be, I'm not worth it. And it manifests itself in different ways. Or the other opposite, the other side of it, I'm better than everyone else. Might not be those words, but it takes that kind of form, that narrative. That's a good word, narrative, in our minds. Form is what we grasp externally. So this is the so-called outside world. Let's just call it the outside world. No, form. Form is what we grasp externally. And this can include our bodies, objects, environment, status, wealth, and appearances. None of these objects of grasping are okay, I'll say this again. None of these objects of grasping are in and of themselves bad. Sometimes they are needed to help us navigate through life and improve our circumstances. However, when our grasping is driven by possessiveness and obsession, it brings about suffering for ourselves and others. Non-abiding is just a Chan way of saying non-grasping. So just obvious examples, owning a house, having a car, having a job, a career, those things in and of themselves, they're not bad. That's how we navigate the world. This is how we exist. It's through our jobs, through our domain, it's the grasping of it. And that's what Zazen will if we persist in our Zazen, then we start our grasping, our attachment, that's another good word. Our attachments will reveal themselves. We grasp on things. Okay, so those are objects, but then what about other things like status, or class? It's just all different forms of grasping. Uproot. Everything is fluid, changing, open to opportunities. This is how things, including ourselves, are. Nothing is fixed, rigid. How can anything be grasped? Grasping and rejecting are always based on self-referential obsessions. If we are captivated or repulsed by whatever comes up in our practice, then it gains power over us, and the problem becomes worse. There again. In and of themselves, let's go back to these objects. In and of themselves, there's nothing wrong with them. They're not good or bad, but it's our grasping to them, our attachments to them. And so what do we do with that? If we're trying to reject that or deny that, or in other words, delude ourselves in thinking that we're not attached to, say, certain things, we're just fueling, it's just adding fire. It's just adding fuel to the fire. So we should just see them clearly and accept them, work with them and let them go. So I'll just back up here. When difficulties arise, it is important to see them clearly, accept them, work with them, and let them go. The true nature of things is non-abiding, so that's non-grasping. But I'll stick with the word non-abiding. The true nature of things is non-abiding, fresh and dynamic. Relating to our feelings and thoughts through grasping and rejecting ruins everything. If we grasp at them, then we're going against their nature. We suffer and probably cause everyone around us to suffer. When we grasp and reject, we're ultimately concerned with me, I, and mine. We're thinking self-referentially. All right, so now the next section is these three principles, which the first one is no thought. How do we relate to our inner experience? In the above platform scripture passage, no thought does not mean cutting off thinking. It means there is no fixation with regard to the free flow of our thinking. We don't need to reify or solidify what we experience into my thoughts, my feelings. So deceptive, isn't it? My thoughts, thinking that they're my thoughts, my feelings, because they arise internally. I mean, it's natural, but as we purify and clear the mind, as we just get deeper in our practice, we start to realize they're just thoughts. They're not ours. They're just, what are they? They just keep arising and disappearing, but it's again, I'm preaching to the choir here. I keep repeating myself. It's the grasping, but this is such an important point. If self-grasping is present, then thoughts don't flow. When we suffer, we are caught in the middle of the stories that we're fabricating, and in this way, we prolong that suffering. Ordinarily, our happiness is completely dependent on thoughts, narratives, concepts, and words. So, if we have negative self-disparaging thoughts and we automatically identify with them, then we feel very unhappy. If someone praises us and we identify with that, then we will feel very happy. This is quite normal. Unfortunately, when we're tethered to our thoughts, we actually lose our autonomy. Like a puppet, we are tied up by the strings of our thoughts, completely at the mercy of our narratives. The problem is not with thoughts. The problem is the strings that tie us to those thoughts, our grasping and rejecting. Okay, and here's an example. I'm actually going to read from Guo Guogu's Dharma brother, who I think is at the Dharma Drum Center. Let's see if I can get his name. Venerable Guo Jing, Dharma heir of the late Master Sheng Yen. So Guo Jing. So here's his example. Observe feelings and thoughts that arise from your body and mind. Only observe them. Know they occur, don't react to them, interfere or prevent them from happening. It's like watching a basketball game. You can't jump onto the court to interfere with the players. Let the players play their own game. You just quietly enjoy it. Or you just quietly observe it, or you just quietly see it. The sensations and thoughts in your body and mind are like the players on the court. You enjoy watching them. You don't pay special attention to one particular player. Rather, you watch the game in its entirety. Here, back to Gogu. Here, thought has two levels of meaning. The first refers to our mental activity, our brain's natural ability to think, symbolize, conceptualize, cognize, and perceive. The second level refers to our fixation on our own constructs, notions, and storylines. In other words, our tendency to reify ideas and feelings into discrete realities, into things. So there is no problem with our natural ability to think, imagine, and so on. The problem is when we start to solidify our thoughts and feelings into fixed notions of me, I, and mine. Roshi Kapleau often use this because people get confused about this, thoughts, but thinking. And Roshi Kapleau would often say there's a difference between thinking and thoughting. So just by saying that, I think we all know the difference. But of course, the thoughting is what we do so much. There's nothing wrong with the intellect. There's nothing inherently wrong with concepts or ideas, or imagination. We do that when we need to do it. The problem, of course, is so much of our time is thoughting. We're just kind of lost in thoughts. So if you have a job that requires a tremendous amount of thinking, then just think. Or problem solving, actually. This perhaps related is problem solving. If there's some kind of complex, difficult, Zazen can really help with that. That's where the creativity comes in. Is through our Zazen, it opens up the space. It can open up space, and then the answer, the resolution may arise from something that's complicated. Not always, of course, but. The point here is there is nothing inherently wrong with our intellect. It's a wonderful tool. The thoughting, however, we can do without. But again, to do without, those are just thoughts. It's just going back to not trying to negate or suppress our thoughts. Thoughts are thoughts. They arise. Just don't grasp at them. To practice, we have to first expose our sense of lack or our need to possess something. Don't identify with these subtle feeling tones. At the same time, don't block them either. There are reasons why we feel and think the way we do. Our thoughts and feelings reveal something about us. Recognizing them as they arise and not grasping or rejecting them is itself a way to own and embrace them. When we can allow ourselves to be with them, we can start to work with them, to work through them, and to let go of them, which means they no longer have a strong hold over us. We generally believe that the way we think about ourselves is how we actually are. We cannot distinguish between our thoughts and the reality of who we are. Moreover, we tend to treat ourselves according to whatever subtle feelings we happen to have at the moment. If we're feeling negative, we don't see anything good about ourselves. When we're in a good mood, even a shortcoming is adorable. This projection happens so quickly that we don't usually recognize it. But this subtle feeling is what the passage above calls thought. So when you feel something within, recognize it, but don't reify, identify, and solidify it into a thing. Definitely don't build a whole narrative around it. This is the meaning of practicing, quote, no thought. Amid thoughts. Say that again. This is the meaning of practicing, quote, no thought, amid thoughts. It's learning to have a healthier relationship with our thoughts instead of being conditioned by them. Just reminded me of Hakuin's chant that we just recited 10 minutes ago. Our thought now being no thought. Our dancing and songs are the voice of the Dharma. Or how about the line before? Our form now being no form. In going and returning, we never leave home. Oh, this is interesting. Sometimes we build a whole narrative around some spiritual experiences we've had. This is another way we reify the natural flow of thoughts. When we have powerful experiences and want a teacher to verify it as awakening, then this very need for verification is a form of self-grasping. Okay, all right. If a person has, quote, woken up from a dream, why would they need verification from someone else? Why would there be a need to announce to the world that they've woken up? Well, that's certainly not our school. I think the point of this is, as we do sesshin, and it happens outside of sesshin as well, but let's talk about sesshin. We'll have an opening. We'll have an insight. The problem, of course, is not the opening or insight in itself, but then it's the grasping of it after. All right, so you've had this experience. Yes, go see the teacher and talk to the teacher, and he or she will test you. And yeah, it's just looking at my own years of practice. One has a certain experience. It's positive. It's great. But then it's so hard, isn't it, to let it go after. It just keeps popping up in the mind. Even years later, it will surface in the mind. We're like, oh, why can't I get back to that state? The sooner we drop it, the better. It's not easy. But that's what we're called to do, is to just endless folding, this endless work. It's a lifetime of work. It's a lifetime. Lifetimes. We just keep getting back to it over and over again. But, letting go of that experience, it's easier said than done. But do it. Just keep getting back to it. And the teacher may remind you, if you bring it up again in Doksan, all right, great. Let it go. It's just going to hinder you in the long run. It's the same thing with enlightenment, wanting enlightenment, grasping. I've come to realize now, It is such a big hindrance. But what are you going to do? It's the grasping of wanting it. It's such a catch-22 in a way. And for it to occur, we have to let go of everything. And I think for some of us anyway, it's wanting that realization that it's the most, I think it's one of the most pernicious things. There it is, thing. It's one of the most pernicious things in our minds. It's such a paradox, but it's just the way things are. We have to drop everything. The free flow of our minds is the wonderful dynamic activity of our creativity and intellect. There's no need to stop thoughts. At the same time, it is necessary to develop the ability to be free from thoughts. One way to do that is to cultivate through meditation the ability to bring the mind from a scattered state to a concentrated state, and from the concentrated state to a unified state, and then to free our grasping of even the unified state, the place where subject and object merge. All right, well, welcome to Sesshin. That's what we're doing. One way the meaning of Sesshin, one way is to unify the mind. That's what Sesshin means, literally. Okay, next section, no form. So again, this is the external world. We've covered the internal, now it's the external. No form is a teaching on how to relate to the external world. Ordinarily, we grasp appearances and characteristics as discrete things. But there's really not a single thing. Nothing is fixed. There is no fixed objective reality. Quote, and here's a quote, to transcend form within the context of forms is a teaching on not denying or divorcing ourselves from form, but allowing all appearances and characteristics to be without us, contaminating them with our projections, ideas, or feelings. We must engage with the world while at the same time we have no vexations about it. When there's room for improvement, we try our best to improve the world of form. When things need to change, we make the change. But emotional afflictions only lead to more vexations. They can contaminate and even ruin everything we see, hear, smell, taste, and touch. Now I've written down here below, being part of the world, but not of it. That's the Zen way. How do we contaminate forms and appearances? We defile them by attaching to them, reifying them as things, quote, out there. When we make everything into a thing, everything we touch can become a problem. For example, I have a student who makes a big deal out of everything. Every task she takes on, however small, she makes into, quote, a thing. And it's always a struggle, always complicated because she overthinks things. I have another student, and for him, everything he encounters is not a big deal. Yet because he feels it is not a big deal, all sorts of unexpected things come up and he makes mistakes. Still, that doesn't really bother him. Both attitudes are problematic. Both follow their own ideas about things, quote, out there, but both have contaminated the form with their own habit tendencies. This is not the meaning of no form. Engage with forms and appearances. Do what is appropriate, but without grasping onto a fixed way of doing things. Whether in daily life or in meditation, the world of form operates through causes and conditions. All appearances are fluid. How then do we work with the changing appearances of form? How do we live in the world of causes and conditions? What about injustice, discrimination, wrongdoing? Of course, The wrongs of the world must be corrected. Each thing is exactly how it's supposed to be through the workings of causes and conditions. That's the thing. John Sensei just a couple of weeks ago, he says, we can shake our fists. I'm just kind of paraphrasing him, but this is my fist that I'm talking about. I can shake my fist and say, this world that we live in, it's just getting more and more chaotic. And what do we do about that? Well, one thing John Sensei, and this is what really stuck with me, is it's like you're blaming causes and conditions. It's just the way things are right now. It's causes and conditions. Wogu talks more about this. This means we need to engage with causes and conditions if we are to better the world. Causes and conditions are about relationships. In working with various relationships, we have to recognize, adapt, wait, and create the right causes and conditions for change. Otherwise, emotional afflictions will follow our every move. Working with causes and conditions also includes relating to people. If we want peace and harmony, we must recognize or expose our discriminations. For example, if you interact with people different from you and become vexed, then that's the indicator that you're attached to some kind of form. In our own discrimination and xenophobia, whether conscious or not, we assume that our own perceptions of the world and of people is the standard of truth. Believing that certain people are different from us, we shun them. Yet evidence shows that it is precisely when we have more interactions across diverse groups of people that we have more ideas and more productivity and tolerance. So in order to advance peace, harmony, and prosperity, we must also adapt or change our viewpoint and create more cross-cultural exchange programs, enable the circulation of different ideas, and have a willingness to connect with others in order to appreciate the benefits of diversity. This is formless practice as it relates to causes and conditions. To recognize, adapt, wait, and create the right causes and conditions is practice. There's no room for self-centeredness. We have to recognize the workings of causes and conditions, adapt and wait for the opportunities, and create the right conditions for change. The right timing is also important. Change occurs with time. Sometimes only the right person or people can cause changes. To not attach to form, we must practice no thought, which means being more open to new ideas and less rigid about our own opinions. When we expose our own subtle fixation to thoughts and ideas, we will be able to work with form. Let me just say that again. When we expose our own subtle fixations to thoughts and ideas, we will be able to work with form. If we're thinking that the world out there is unjust without seeing what's going on inside of us, then we may be simply contaminating the world of form with our own attachments. I remember seeing this statue. It was like it was a statue of Mahatma Gandhi, and underneath, this was during one of my travels, and underneath it was that quote. Let me get this right. It goes something like, be the change in yourself for the change. If you want to see the change in the world, be the change. Something like that. But it's working with our own defilements, purifying the mind through Zazen, and seeing our attachments, seeing our defilements, seeing what we need to work on. That's the change that will occur, and that will better the world. That change, that we change ourselves and we change the world. But it takes patience. It takes time. This is not an overnight project. Yeah, there you go. Be the change you want to see in the world. I think it was shorter. Anyway, you got the idea. All right. Non-abiding or non-grasping. Non-grasping is relating to ourselves and others in an open and receptive way, where we allow everything to flow and recognize that each moment is alive, vibrant, filled with infinite possibilities. This is actually the nature of experiencing the workings of Buddha nature and the direct expression of natural awakening. Let me start again. So this section is non-abiding. Non-abiding is relating to ourselves and others in an open and receptive way, where we allow everything to flow and recognize that each moment is alive, vibrant, filled with infinite possibilities. This is actually the nature of experiencing the workings of Buddha nature and the direct expression of natural awakening. It is who we are, free from the internal shackles of thoughts and feelings and the external conditioning of form. We want things to stay the same. We want things to stay the same because it gives us a sense of security and control. But nothing stays the same. When we embrace change, we become vulnerable, and this vulnerability is true courage. There is strength in being okay with a loss of control, with unpredictability and potential loss. In truth, nothing can break us. We as humans are so resilient. It is only when we try to control and hold on to things that we feel broken. The reverse is also true. When we experience loss, we desperately try to control. This is because deep inside we feel broken, so we try to fix ourselves. We resist how things really are. But if we embrace our vulnerability, tap into who we truly are, and align with non-abiding, whatever difficulties we face will eventually be integrated within us and will be resolved. And I'm kind of bummed out because I missed out on a couple of stories I wanted to tell. I kind of somehow missed it. So let me just go right into that. It might not be related to what we just talked about now, but let's take a look here. Okay, so just going back to this no form. This is not the meaning of no form. Engage with forms and appearances, do what is appropriate, but without grasping onto a fixed way of doing things. All right, so here's an example of that. This is again in this book, this great book, Soul Food, Stories to Nourish the Spirit and the Heart. And the story goes like this. 2 monks journeying home came to the banks of a fast-flowing river, where they met a young woman unable to cross the current alone. One of the monks picked her up in his arms and set her safely on her feet on the other side, and the 2 monks continued on their travels. The monk, who had crossed the river alone, could finally restrain himself no longer and began to rebuke his brother. Do you not know it is against our rules to touch a young woman? You have broken the holy vows. The other monk answered, Brother, I left that young woman on the banks of the river. Are you still carrying her? Tongshang was asked, the normal mind is the way. "What is the normal mind?" He replied, "Not picking things up along the road." All right, going back to non-abiding. We as humans are so resilient. It is only when we try to control and hold on to things that we feel broken. The reverse is also true. When we experience loss, we desperately try to control. This is because deep inside we feel broken, so we try to fix ourselves. That's the thing about this practice. That's the thing about Buddhism. Or it's just going back to, from the very beginning, we're whole and complete. There's nothing wrong with us. Whole and complete. It really is the inverse of, I'm not going to get on a rant about the Catholic religion or the Judeo-Christian, but this whole idea of sin, that there's something wrong with us, that there's something innate that's unchanging. The word sin, I mean, not everyone believes that, obviously, but it really is like the flip side of that. It's not original sin, it's original purity. Our original purity. Yes, of course, we have a lot of work to do to realize that original purity, purifying the mind. But from the very beginning, all beings are Buddha. Every single one of us. It's refining and over again. Just practice. And then things change. And then we start to tap into that. We start to see that. We start to see that our thoughts are not real. That we're not stuck. That we're not stuck with these habitual patterns of, I'm like this or I'm like that. I feel like this, I feel like that. We stop identifying with those thoughts and feelings. They just come through us. They just come through us. That's the purifying. Just get back to it. Doesn't matter where you think you are in your practice. That's just another thought. Oh, there it is again. There's that tape recorder again. Okay. We resist how things really are. But if we embrace our vulnerability, tap into who we truly are, and align with non-abiding, whatever difficulties we face will eventually be integrated within us and will be resolved. There's always going to be opposition when we fixate on ideas about me, I, and mine. But we can respond to the world without injecting a sense of self into our decisions, views, and endeavors. This self is a small s, self. This means our own ideas about gain and loss, benefit and harm do not block our decisions and experiences. Instead, we consider what is needed depending on the circumstances. The difficulties we face in life are indicators of where we are stuck. We must allow ourselves to be open to our underlying feelings and allow them to come through without judging ourselves. That's another one, the judging. The thought arises and then we put judgment on it. That's just gumming up the works. We must allow ourselves to be open to our underlying feelings and allow them to come through without judging ourselves. Then we can be content and relax our grasping tendencies. We are then able to face causes and conditions and work with them. In non-opposition and openness, everything eventually works out within us. Well, our time is up, and we'll now recite the 4 vows.